I'm very competitive by nature, and I wanted some like instant gratification. So I wanted to grow up from the outside in. So I said, okay, I need an experience. I need to sign up for something that's just gonna rock me to my core.
Right.
Take me to a place I've never been before.
Move over, baby boomers. It's time for Gen XYZ. It's time to stop waiting on the world to change. It's time to be the change. It's time to stop thinking about how your life can be better. It's time to start taking action, massive action to improve your life. Join Zach Winter and Mark Adair Rios every week as we learn how others had the grit, determination, and conviction to 10x their lives, and as we explore ways that can help you 10x your life.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another edition of the 10X for Gen XYZ podcast. I'm Zach Winter.
And I'm Mark Adair Rios.
And today we're happy to have as our guest, Brad Ritter. Brad is the founder of School of Grit. He started School of Grit after graduating from SEALFit's infamous Kokoro Camp, which is renowned as the world's toughest civilian training. And after graduating, he wanted to find a way to serve others and help people take control of their lives and get unstuck. So he accomplished this through a proven system that focuses on helping you with your physical, mental, emotional, intuitional, and warrior spirit. And that is the School of Grit. And he's also written a book called School of Grit. Brad, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Zach. Thanks, Mark. Happy to be here, man. And you just said a mouthful. So
Yeah. Well, maybe we should start with the Kokoro Camp, since that's kind of what was the impetus for School of Grit. And tell us about that. It sounds intense.
Oh yeah, it was very intense. So to tell that story, I think I need to back up a little bit and just explain that I'm, to your audience, who maybe they can see me, maybe not, but I'm 42 years old, and at the time I signed up for Kokoro Camp, I was in my mid-30s. I guess you would say I was going through, the midlife crisis or whatever you want to call it. But my life up until that point, I didn't have a background of extreme adversity. I was very lucky. I grew up in a warm, loving environment. I'm the oldest of 4 children, and we're all super close. My parents are married, so I didn't come from a broken home. I didn't really have to struggle with having a roof over my head. Where's dinner going to come from? We were middle class. We were white, Caucasian, middle class, right smack dab in Indiana. That's how I grew up. And right or wrong, that was my background. So I discovered in my mid-30s, I just thought, man, I haven't really pushed it, has life been a little too easy for me? Like, honestly, those are the questions going through my head. And I was successful by, anyone's measures. I had a great job. Awesome, I still have an awesome family, nice house. We live in an affluent neighborhood. But, man, something inside of me was just burning. And I was like, dude, you're not even hitting. You're not even getting close to what your mission is in life or what your purpose is, So I don't know if you guys have struggled with that, or maybe your audience has, but one day it hit me like a ton of bricks, and it wasn't anything traumatic. It wasn't like I was in a car accident or I got diagnosed with something. I listened to the inner voice in my body, in my head, and that voice, whether you believe it's God or whatever it is you believe in, it's good to listen to and check in with, and then not just listen to it and put it on your bookshelf like a book you read and you don't take actionable items on anything you read. I was like, I'm going to do something with this. And that voice was telling me, like, hey, you need to change something. You need to go after something. You need to push yourself to your limits and see what you're really made of. Because up until that point, I hadn't. And I've always had sort of a fixation with people who've gone through traumatic experiences. You hear from motivational speakers all the time, and a lot of those folks, they've had just incredible backgrounds. They've gone through some real adversity. I just didn't really have that. Not that I'm the same as anybody else. When I was shy around the girls and stuff, but I'm talking about like the real stuff, the real trauma. Right. And so I took stock of that, and I thought, well, what can I do? And I did what most people do, and I hopped on the internet and did a quick search for a purpose, and there was like 27 million hits, as you can imagine. And I thought, okay, I'm not getting anywhere. I was reading all these blogs and all this stuff, and hopped on. I like video, so I hopped on YouTube and I typed in purpose, and this lady popped up on my screen. She was in like top 5 hits, and you may know of her. Her name's Angela Duckworth. She's a psychologist, and she wrote a book called Grit. And I listened to her TED Talk, man, and her 6 minute TED Talk, it really helped change my life. She went on to explain that grit was like the number one indicator and predictor of success in life. And she had all these stories to back it up, and she had studied West Point graduates, teachers teaching in inner cities, top sales reps at like just cutthroat companies. And the number one indicator of whether those people were going to succeed or not was grit. It is measurable, and you can grow it. So, man, I was hooked. I was like, okay, I think this is going to lead me somewhere. So I bought her book, read it, and to sum it up, you can grow grit from the inside out. You can grow it from the outside in. Well, I'm very competitive by nature, and I wanted some like instant gratification. So I wanted to grow it from the outside in. So I said, okay, I need an experience. I need to sign up for something that's just going to rock me to my core.
Right.
Take me to a place I've never been before. And I hopped back on YouTube and typed in world's toughest training. And that's when Kokoro Camp popped up. So Kokoro Camp is the brainchild of Commander Mark Devine. He's a former Navy SEAL commander. And he designed Kokoro Camp specifically to train spec ops candidates. So these are folks that wanted to go into the tier 1 special operations community, get them trained up so that they had a better likelihood of passing. Because I don't know if you guys know much about spec ops, but the attrition rate's just ridiculous. You might have 200 SEAL candidates that show up for BUDS training, which BUDS is their training that they all go through, and these are all just studs, right?
Yeah.
Like Olympic athletes, and out of 200 you might have 30 that make it.
Wow.
So it's like, what's the secret sauce? Why do some people make it and some people don't? And it's really the 6 inches between your ears. So Mark put together Kokoro Camp as a way to train up these prospects, and he had one civilian, I think, attend the very first camp, and he's like, dude, why are you here? And I don't know who he is, but he just said something like, I just wanted to see if I could do it. So as he had more camps, more civilians started entering. And that's when I thought, well, I'm going to give it a go. Not that I want to be a Navy SEAL, but I figured, well, they know a little bit about grit and mental toughness and all that good stuff. So I want to see what they can dish out. And boy, did they dish it out.
Well, what was your physical ability level at that point? What were you doing fitness-wise?
So I've always been into fitness in some aspect, but I would say back then, man, I didn't know what I was doing, working out, and I played baseball in high school. So yeah, we worked out, but it was nothing like you see kids doing today.
Yeah.
I really didn't start taking it somewhat serious until college, but I mean, it was all cosmetic, I was doing curls for the girls and nothing cross-functional. And I have some buddies who are in the military. They're in the Army, and they work in long-range surveillance. So they jump out of airplanes and stuff like that.
Wow.
And I said, hey, can I work out with you guys? And they're like, yeah, sure. And I'm thinking I'm in good shape. I can hang with you. I can hang with these guys, right? Dude, they put it on me. I was so sore. I think I threw up after the first workout.
Yeah.
And it shocked me, but that's what I needed, because it was a whole nother level that's like I didn't even know existed. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Is it similar to CrossFit? I just started doing CrossFit, and I think a lot of military people or former military people do CrossFit.
Yeah. CrossFit's really good in the fact that I think they've made fitness for everybody. I think they've done a really good job of that. And yeah, a lot of it is based on CrossFit, but you also have to have a high endurance factor.
Oh, yeah.
So there are, in my opinion, there are certain things that probably CrossFit tends to neglect. And if you're choosing to go into, spec ops, or you're choosing to go to Kokoro Camp or something like that, you're going to want to shore that stuff up. You got to be able to run long distance. You got to be able to carry, heavy objects on your back or whatever, that sort of stuff. Yeah, but CrossFit's great.
Yeah, CrossFit's more of it's like a HIIT training, right?
Exactly. It's HIIT training.
Very short time periods. Yeah.
So my, if those of you who do CrossFit and you're like, well, I do CrossFit, could I do Kokoro Camp? Imagine the nastiest WOD you've ever done and having that last 3 hours. And that's the very first 3 hours of Kokoro Camp, and you got to go 50 plus.
Wow.
So just
So
I'm trying to take you into that mental
yeah,
projection.
So how many days is Kokoro Camp, and how many hours each day are you out there exercising, grinding away?
Yeah, so Kokoro Camp is based on Hell Week with the Navy SEALs. So traditional Hell Week is about a week, believe it or not, and they don't get any sleep, or maybe a couple hours at the most.
Hmm.
So mine was loosely based on that, and I say very loosely because it was only 50 hours. I tell people, and they're like 50 hours. So it started on a Friday morning at 8 o'clock. I think it ended Sunday somewhere around 2 or 3 in the afternoon, and it was just nonstop. But by the time I figured out what time I had waken up to get ready, to the time I actually, put my head on a pillow and went to sleep Sunday night, I was up probably over 60 hours straight.
Wow.
So
Are you,
that's the length of
Crazy.
it.
and is it located down in Southern California, down near Pendleton, or
It
was it on the
is.
same beach?
So when I went there, it was in Encinitas, California, which is pretty close.
Yeah.
And then since then, it's moved to, I believe, Vail Lake, which is a little farther north.
Hmm.
Yeah. So, but it was awesome. So we had, I mean, you name it, we probably did it. We were in the ocean a lot. We were in pools.
Crazy.
Yeah, it was crazy.
I got a question for you. Just kind of go back to when you were going through Angela Duckworth's type of stuff. And was she the one? She was the one that kind of helped you kind of solidified this idea of grit, correct? Or was that the
Yes.
book?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
She's the one that first made me realize what grit even is,
Right.
and how to, and there are several definitions of it, but she gives her own definition and really went into depth on it, and it
What is
just made
that?
sense.
Yeah. What is that for you in terms of, you said it's measurable. I'd love to just hear, number one, what your definition of it is, and how is that measurable? Because everybody's idea probably is different, but we know we're being gritty when we're actually being gritty, even if we can't explain it. Do you know
It's
what I
one of
mean?
those weird things, right? It's hard to explain. You can't really see it. I mean, I suppose you can if you see someone, sweating or doing whatever it is they're doing, studying real late or whatever their jam is. But yeah, I think it would help if I give you my own definition
Sure.
of it. And this, I've gone through metamorphosis of this as well. So this is accumulated over a period of years. So I equate grit as uncommon perseverance in the face of adversity, backed by a strong why to achieve a worthy goal. Now that's a mouthful,
Hmm.
but there's 4 segments in there. It's uncommon perseverance, which is that whole warrior spirit, like never say die type attitude.
Mm-hmm.
You got to face some sort of adversity. Hey, when it's sunny, everybody wants to go for a run or hang out outside, but when it's snowing or it's cold and rainy, like it's not as easy. In fact, that's when your mind's probably going to tell yourself, you know what? No, I don't need to. I'll do it tomorrow.
Right.
I'll put it off. I'll do it tomorrow. So that's why I put adversity in there, backed by a strong why. Simon Sinek put that on the map. If you've read his book, Why, ask yourself why 3 to 5 times. You'll get to the core of the real reason of why you're doing anything.
Nice.
And then to achieve a worthy goal. So not all goals are created equal. We got to be able to say no to some stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of us have a habit of saying yes to everything. That's not necessarily a good thing. Not if it's not aligned with your passions, your principles, your purpose.
It's interesting. A lot of us, we rely on, I don't know, we kind of just float into the, oh, I love what I'm doing. I love this hobby. I'm going to turn it into a business or whatever. And that key that you said, this success key, I've seen this before and it really makes sense. This perseverance, but adding that layer of adversity on there really brings into focus what being an entrepreneur, if you're an entrepreneur, that's what it really, really brings that into focus. The adversity part of it is like, it's always coming at us. Even on the off days, there's always something coming at you,
Yep,
and
100%.
yeah, it's very interesting. I was just going to say the other thing that kind of comes up too, it comes up a lot on this podcast as we talk, is I have a little bit of experience in Brazilian jiu-jitsu and I love MMA. Like I'm a big fan of MMA. And what we found, or what we're seeing now, is this rise of these wrestlers coming onto the scene in mixed martial arts, where a lot of the fighters have a very hard time dealing with these wrestlers. And part of the background of wrestlers is this grittiness, this ability to drag people into such deep waters that you need some sort of grit to get at, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's very interesting, you know, and that's what all of this kind of brings all of that into focus for me.
Yeah, I love MMA as well, and yeah, you're right. I've got some buddies who were wrestlers, and you knew they were wrestlers. They were always every single one of them's tough. I don't know if you've ever attended a wrestling practice, but it is no joke, and that's got to be. That is. I've never wrestled, but I practice Taekwondo with my kids, so I do have that martial arts flair in there. When it's mano a mano, and there's nowhere to hide, and you lose, you get your butt kicked like that. You are learning grit, you are learning mental toughness, you are learning emotional resiliency, and the ability to pick yourself up, dust yourself up, and go at it again, time and time and time again.
Interesting.
Yep. So you have a school called School of Grit, and you were talking about, you know, before you were kind of in your comfort zone, you weren't challenging yourself, and that kind of led you on this path, this journey to discovering grit and doing the Kokoro Camp and then starting School of Grit. How do you help your clients that you're coaching in School of Grit build grit, identify what grit is, and how do they build it and apply it to their life?
Yeah, great question, man. I'd love to answer that, and thank you for asking that. So I work primarily through group coaching. So I don't do any one-on-one coaching. Not that I wouldn't, but you'd have to be the right fit. I love the group dynamic. And I've been doing that for a number of years. And what I discovered in group coaching, and by the way, this is all over video. It's all over Zoom. So none of this is in person. It's getting ready to be with live events and stuff like that. But we'll meet early in the morning. I'm just a big proponent of owning the morning, having a great, you know, morning ritual, morning routine. So we'll meet in the morning, and usually about an hour. Half of that call is lessons. So I'll introduce lessons either from my book or from, you know, Angela Duckworth or just other places that I've learned different things. And the other half, though, that's where I say the magic happens, because that's where we open it up to whoever's on the call, and it's like, all right, let's get real. Like, what's going on in your life? And I don't want this cookie cutter bullshit. Like, what's really going on? And we've heard anything you can imagine, from divorce to, you know, addicted to drugs, alcoholism, you name it. And the great thing about that is a couple things, but we all get to come together and help each other out, which is that's the magic, man. I think that's what really keeps people coming back, because it's a safe place, right? I'm not here to judge. I maintain everybody I let into this group has all been selected. I don't just let anyone in. So I'm very selective about it, and people feel that security. I think there's safety in distance when we're talking about talking with you folks right now. Like, I feel totally comfortable. It'd probably be a little bit different if we were in the same room and I'm looking right across from you. It might take a few more minutes to open up and feel that sense of vulnerability or authenticity. But that's the first thing we do. The second is the foundation of what we do at School of Grit. And you said it earlier when you were talking about who I am and what I do, is physical. We got to move as human beings. We have legs for a purpose. Now, unless you have a medical reason why, like, I get it. You know, some of us have been dealt certain, let's just say, shit sandwiches that we have to deal with, and you physically can't do it, unable to perform. Totally get it. But for the rest of us, you got to move. All right? You got to move. You can't just be sedentary. So, naturally, we train together. We meet up on Saturday mornings. I have a gym in my garage, and over Zoom, we work out together, man. Nice. We sweat together. That's awesome. Then we'll do, I'm a big proponent of crucible style experiences. We'll train for those.
What is that?
So a crucible style experience is it's an experience that'll change you, because, like Kokoro Camp, or similar to, it's an experience that's just going to change you because it's tough. It's hard. It's hard. and we want to do it together. So an example of that could just be from like the CrossFit world. I would equate, if you're familiar with the workout Murph, the Murph Hero
Yeah.
WOD, like we
Yeah.
do Murph together. We do that every May, Memorial Day, May, boom.
Nice.
We know we're training for it.
Yeah.
We'll do, which I'm wearing the t-shirt, I don't know if you can see this, Chad 1000X, which I don't know if you're familiar with the company GoRuck, but that's to honor a fallen Navy SEAL. We do 1,000 step-ups on a
Mhm.
box, one of those CrossFit type
Mm.
wooden boxes,
Yeah.
while wearing 40 pounds of weight.
Right.
1,000
Nice.
step-ups. Yeah, it takes like
Crazy.
That'll kill you.
3 hours, man. Yeah.
Wow.
But that's where like you really get to the heart. You really learn about someone though when they're just hammering it, right? They're
Yeah.
sweating their ass off. They can't hardly breathe.
Right.
And that's
Yeah.
where the coaching comes into place. All right, breathe. Focus on your breath. That's a big proponent in what we teach in mental toughness is, arousal control. How do you do that? Well, your physiology controls your psychology. So focus on your breath. Slow down.
Yeah.
Pause, breathe, think, execute. So that's the other way that we really train in the School of Grit tribe is actual physical training
Yeah.
together.
Yeah.
I totally am on board with everything you said and how you're focused on being very physically fit and pushing yourself physically. And I find it so interesting the way that it's almost subconscious, the way you transfer that grit of persevering on some physical endeavor over to some other part of your life, whether it's work or family. You can apply that same grit that you've developed through physical endurance or physical really pushing yourself.
100%. It shows up everywhere in life. And personally, I think physical is the easiest to train. I think you'll see immediate results, whether that's losing weight, gaining muscle, you name it. You can track that. It
Yeah.
starts to get a little bit tougher when you train in the mental mountain, or
That's what I was
especially
gonna
or
ask.
especially when you get into the emotional mountain.
Yeah.
That's like Mount
Yeah.
Everest, man.
Yeah.
A lot of people have a lot of baggage, and if you haven't examined that stuff from childhood, you better. 'Cause
Yeah.
it's showing up in adulthood. It just is.
Are you guys getting into that too in your coaching?
Yeah, we cover all that. We start the physical, mental, emotional, intuitional, and warrior spirit. And it's all, to me, that's like that's the whole package, right? That's the whole body.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many, stud athletes I've met that are just absolute soup sandwiches mentally and emotionally, and vice versa. I've met some really like just cerebral assassins. That's
Yeah.
like, dude, you're so out of shape though. Like
Yeah.
I know you. You're probably looking at yourself in the mirror. You can't be happy with the way you look. It's like,
Yeah.
let's do something about it.
And it's also adding different arrows to your quiver, or inside it, to be able to approach a problem that isn't necessarily. I think the initial thing is, I got grit. I'm going to hit this thing head on. When sometimes you need to do a little Aikido or a little Judo or something like that,
Yeah.
and approach it from a different way to make progress.
Yeah, I
You
love
know?
it. It's the Bruce Lee way, right?
Sure.
Everybody's,
Be water.
what's the best style? Dude, there isn't a best. It's like
No, man.
hey, what can you do and go do that, and
Yeah.
try not to, be so attached to one style because there's multiple ways to do different things.
But the idea, at least as I'm kind of listening to you, and as I'm kind of formulating my own kind of idea of what grit might be, because I haven't really thought about it a lot, mentally, but is you have to be able to get to a point when you're in the game to be able to start to use different tools to approach. If you don't have enough grit to just even be to the point where it's like, okay, I'm at a wall and this is a real wall. Like, it's not the wall that most people have, which is, 2 miles back. Like, I'm here. So now how do I get around it, up over it, stuff like that. And already that's a step forward from some people that they don't have the grit to even get to that point, I guess.
Exactly. And that's why I love training and the physical part of it, because to me a workout doesn't begin until you hit that wall and you're like, okay, this sucks, I want to quit. Cool. Guess what? The workout really, for me, I tell myself the workout just started, because this is when other people are going to stop, but not no. Nope. Dig down. And it's just awesome. Like if you really take the time to analyze where your mind goes and keep track of it, because we
Yeah.
all have these loops, these mental loops
Yeah.
inside our brains, and it's I can go in the weeds on that, but yeah, it's awesome stuff.
That's
Yeah.
cool. Do you have kids?
Hey, I have two. I
And
have,
are you teaching them kind of intuitively, or are they on the program?
you know, it's hard coaching your family. I'll
Oh
say.
my gosh, they're probably coaching you.
But yes, I will, because we'll just do things like we work out together. Having that gym in the garage has helped, and you know, even if it's just they're there 5 minutes, hey, at least they did something. You know what I mean? And I'll have them. They'll write their own workouts up on the whiteboard. And my favorite thing, my wife comes along too, which is just awesome. We get the whole family going. My favorite thing though is my daughter. She ran 5 miles with us not too long ago, and it was super hot, super
How old
hot.
is
One of those
she?
hot, humid. She's 11.
Oh,
She's
okay.
11,
Nice.
and it was a lot for her. And man, she wanted to quit. So I was
boy.
like, perfect teaching moments. I was like, all right, you know, focus on your breathing. All right, we're gonna run to that next corner. You're right. You're chopping down the big goal and the micro goals. And then I was like, you know, visualize success. Like see yourself on the beach. You know, whatever.
Yeah.
So
That's
That's
awesome.
great.
And
You
she
know-
responds to that kind of stuff. In the moment.
sometimes, not always.
Yeah, like you're saying, it's hard for parents to be coaches.
You know how it is as a parent. If someone else says it, it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And I'm like, I've been telling you that the whole time. It's just coming
Right.
from my voice.
That's
So
funny.
it must be like Charlie Brown's teacher.
Right.
Right.
Wah, 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 wah.
Exactly.
Yeah. You know, a while ago I did the 75-day hard challenge. You're familiar with that?
I am
Andy
familiar with
Frizzell's?
that. Mhm.
And that was great. And it was another way, I think, to try to build grit, perseverance, stick-to-itiveness. And I was able to make it through. But you know, once you're through it, you try to keep some of it. It's hard to keep all of it. And I try to keep some of what I was doing. But I'd love for you to talk about kind of that aspect of how, you know, life is a marathon. It's not a sprint. And you can have grit at any given moment, but it's also important not to like burn out and try super hard and you burn out. It's really figuring out how to incorporate this throughout your life for the duration.
Yeah, that is. I'm very familiar with that. I've done it before. It's a great program. I know several people who've gone through it, and every single one of them has said something similar to what you just said, Zach. It's like kind of like now what, and I actually write about that in my book. I had the same thing after Kokoro Camp. It was kind of like, well, now what do? I trained my butt off for this, and it was the biggest goal I ever went after, and I achieved it. But now what do? Someone called it the arrival fallacy, and I love that term, the arrival fallacy, because you get to that end goal, and then there's like you're depressed. You are. You're like it's like, what am I gonna do now? I gotta find a new mission. I gotta find a new mission. What am I gonna do with myself?
Yeah, Dan Sullivan mentioned something similar to that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm big on because it is a marathon. It's the journey, right? We want to enjoy the journey.
Right.
I'm big on optimal performance. So I'm not necessarily interested in how high you can go, because I guarantee as soon as you hit that high point, there's going to be a low point afterwards. You can't. There's a certain part you just can't sustain. It's unsustainable. You might hit it, but then you're going to drop back down. So I'm more interested in optimal performance, and I'm just a big believer that it's not hard. It's not hard to do if you break it down into simple things. And where I'm going with that is there's I believe there's 6 things you need to do to optimize your life, and they're simple, but you want to do these common things uncommonly well. That's the differentiator. And the 6 things are food, nutrition, having that dialed in, movement and fitness, which we talked about already, sleep, another big one, sleep and recovery, stress management, because you're not going to get rid of stress. Stress is here. It's how you deal with it, okay? And the last 2, time in nature. I don't think a lot of us get outside enough, intentional time outside. And the very last one is communities of practice, or just social networks that you're a part of.
Hmm.
You know, people, like-minded people that are there to build you up, not bring you down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds like a middle-aged person's Bible right there. I mean, really, honestly, it's all the stuff that we ignore.
And you know
for-
it. You you
forever.
should be doing it.
Right.
And
It's
then
like,
once we get
yeah.
a certain age, you're like, oh man, I need to de-stress. Oh man, I wish I
Yep.
could just make more connections with people. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Interesting.
But I challenge like anybody, like if you kind of check the box, what's cool about that is you can't keep track of that. If people are into journaling, I have an on again off relationship with journaling. I'm good and then I'm bad. I'm good and I'm bad.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But that's something you can deliberately take notes on, and it's like you can see patterns over time.
Mhm.
And if you knock out each one of those 6, I can pretty much guarantee you've had a pretty good day. And you just stack those good days on top of good days, and you got good weeks, good months, good year.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's not hard, but it's hard to do them well. It
I
can be.
love that idea, man. I really, something that served me very, very well over the years. And I've kind of, sublimated it in a lot of areas of my life, not all of them, but this idea of chunking away at big goals, chunking smaller, just bite-sized pieces, still kind of pushing, but
Mhm.
just knowing that, you're making building blocks rather than just, swing yourself headlong into some huge, unattainable, like you said, Zach, unsustainable kind of goal constantly. Right. But chunking away and knowing I'm going to get there.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's like compound interest, man. And,
Yeah,
and
yep.
that's what going back to that idea of sustainability. What's really interesting about that is after you did the boot camp, if you chose to do another boot camp or something similar to that, especially if you were keeping up with yourself, it would be that much easier to approach the I guess it's the fulcrum point, right?
Mhm.
Like there was probably a point way earlier that was difficult to get through
Mhm.
to get to the end. Well, now the next time you're that much further along, even though you haven't been kind of pressing on it, you're that much it's not like you're starting from base zero every single
Exactly.
time.
That foundation's built up,
Yeah.
and yeah, it still is the hardest thing I've gone through, and I know that mentally. So anytime I find myself, whether it's burning the candle at both ends at work, or doing a
Yeah.
long run or whatever, it's like, man, I've been there. I've been way worse. It can
Right.
always be worse, right? And I know what that feels like. So I know I
Interesting.
can keep going, and you just keep moving. It really is. I mean, it's just taking that next step,
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
just never know. You never know.
And
Excellent.
so much of this is developing habits and the right habits, right? Shifting yourself from bad habits that aren't improving yourself and optimizing your life towards good habits. But I think you were talking about the cyclicality of life and the cyclicality of nature and the way you act, Brad. And so I think even though you strive to have and maintain these good habits, people fall out of them. You get in ruts. You start binging Netflix or
Mhm.
whatever and staying up late. And so I
Hey,
wonder if
guilty, man. I
Yeah,
do
oh,
that too. Absolutely.
totally. And so I think part of the optimization, right, and the perseverance is being able to identify sooner rather than later that you've fallen into a rut that you need to come back out of and start optimizing again.
Totally.
Being consciously aware,
100%.
is huge. And man, too, if you've got I love my wife. She's my biggest accountability partner I have. Like
Interesting.
she'll tell me. She'll be like, what have you been doing? Like, you're just off. And I'm like, yeah, I watched 2 more episodes last night of whatever it is. Yeah.
See, I always
What's-
choose to start binging at like the stupidest times, like Tuesday night at like
Oh, yeah.
11 o'clock. And all of
I'm
a
not-
sudden, I'm like 5 episodes in. It's 4 a.m. I'm like, what am I doing?
And
man?
dude, I don't it's easy for me to get addicted to stuff like that. Like, so I don't watch a lot of
Totally.
TV. I don't.
Yeah.
But I will. Like, I like live sports, and then somebody's telling me like, "Oh, you got to watch The Terminal List." you gotta watch the Terminal List because it's right up my alley. So of course I watch it. I'm like, well, I can't just stop at one episode, man. I gotta see what
Yeah.
happens.
Oh, I totally
But
binged
yeah,
that.
can't do it. Yeah, that was the
Me
last
too.
thing I binged.
Me too.
And I mean, I'm glad I did. Excellent series. Shout
Yeah.
out to Jack Carr. But I'm the same way with like, so you got to know. I think you got to know what your triggers are too.
Yeah.
That's part of being consciously aware. So I know, nutrition wise, man, I'm a sweets guy, dude. I like
Yeah.
my sweets. So like, if I open up the pantry and it's eye level, like it's going down. I'm
Especially
taking
while
it
you're binging.
down. Especially when I'm binging. So
Totally.
I'm just going to eliminate it. So I don't have
Perfect.
to make that choice because I think as you go throughout the day, you've got these small little deposits that you're withdrawing from, like a bank account. But at the end of the day, if you've been up early and you're cranking, you've been working hard, you've been working out, you've been dealing with the kids, you're tired. I don't have that willpower anymore, man. That's where
Yeah.
the pantry just eats me alive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get that.
But I think it's also important to be kind to yourself. And I think it's okay to try to be cognizant of like not falling off the wagon, but not beat yourself up for it when you do. And just
Yeah.
recognize, oh, I need to shift back over to this way. Shift back to being a little more diligent here.
I agree. It's like kind of like the 80-20 rule. I mean, you got to have some fun. You got to have fun while you're here. And I mean, I was running errands earlier and bought a dozen donuts on the way home. You know what? I don't feel guilty about that at all. Not at all.
Well, part of that really, and maybe this ties back into the work that you're doing on yourself is all of it really goes to becoming more self-aware. You know what I mean? Like
Oh,
really
yeah.
kind of knowing yourself, and being able to, like, I had a similar thing with, I really love whiskey, man. I like trying different whiskeys. Zach got me into it.
Oh yeah,
And-
I'm a bourbon lover.
Oh
Bro,
my
bro,
gosh,
oh, yeah.
man. But I noticed that, like, I started looking forward to, because again, I watch UFC, and instead of having beer, I'll have my whiskey and I'll watch the fights. And now
Yep.
there's fights every weekend. But you know what I mean? And so
Oh yeah.
now I started looking forward to that. And there was a thing in my mind. I was like, whoa, hold on. I don't like that part that I'm looking forward. Come Friday, once all my work's done,
Yeah.
get ready for the fights tomorrow. Go grab and I was like, you know what? I need to cut this. I need to cut this thing back a little bit because I didn't like the way it was. And it's not necessarily just the alcohol part of it. It actually had to do with, I don't like the idea of being addicted to anything.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Totally agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I could see that thing, especially being a, older, being a smoker and having conquered that many years ago. Like I can see the path very clearly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
And congratulations on quitting smoking too.
Oh,
It's
dude.
got to be one of the hardest things.
Very
to
difficult.
give up. So good on
Yeah.
you, man. Good on you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, and so how, with your clients, or maybe even with you, like you were talking about kind of measuring grit. Is that something that you guys kind of apply towards, having successes in the outside world, outside of what you guys are doing, like in terms of, I don't know, landing big clients, or, in our world, it's like raising capital, or, doing big commercial deals or things like that. Like how do you guys measure your success on all of that?
Yeah, I think that's a big indicator. I mean, there's a couple metrics we can pull. Like we we have this assessment we give people at the beginning when they start, and then we give it to them like by yearly, just to see how they're scoring and in the mental, physical, emotional, like those categories. We got some questions that go along with that.
Mm-hmm.
But then too, it really digs into part of the training we do inside of like the warrior spirit realm, let's say, is really digging deep and figuring out like what you think your purpose is.
Mm-hmm.
And then we hold you accountable for it. So, okay, cool, Mark, your purpose is XYZ. Well, we're gonna hold you to that because you said it was, and it needs to be something you feel so strongly in that it doesn't matter when adversity comes up. You're gonna go find a way to go through it, go around it, blow it up, whatever. And if we see this repetitive behavior of not doing what you say you're doing, maybe it's time to reevaluate it. Maybe it's not really your purpose, and that's okay. It's okay to shift gears, man. It's okay to
Right.
pivot. Like it's a season of your life. So yeah, to your point, you can totally measure that with, the deals you're closing, things like that.
Okay.
100%.
And then you mentioned it just brought up a question. If there's a lot of people, and I know, I'm closely related to some people that they don't have any idea of what their purpose is,
Hmm.
or they can't articulate it, or they know there might be something out there, but it seems so far away. And so I guess, would you recommend people, joining the School of the Grit in order to figure that out? Or do you like people to have already an idea of that before they kind of join?
Oh no, come our way. We'll gladly take you on. You don't have to be super clear on that.
Hmm.
I mean, if you are already, hoo-yah, that's awesome.
Right.
But no, it's because the work we do is a lot of it's internal. So like, here's something interesting that maybe not everybody does, but before every single time without fail, before our calls in the morning, we do some sort of breath work together, some sort of meditation. It's either
Nice.
led by me, or I'll have a recording from someone else I follow or someone I've trained under. And the purpose of the breath work, the purpose of meditation, is to go deep within and really develop that witnessing piece, so you can witness your thoughts. And yeah, it feels a little weird at first. It did for me, but I've been practicing now for several years, and now it's game changer, man. It really is. If you're not if you're not looking within, you need to start, because I'm
Right.
just a believer that a lot of the answers are inside you, man. You just got to get through all that crap, all that shit, all that nastiness, and see it. It's
Interesting.
there. It's probably been staring at you the whole time. But we're so, man, society right now, it's crazy with all the distractions with our devices and with TVs, and it's like you got all this stuff coming at you. You need to take the time to slow down.
So true.
Slow down.
So true.
Yeah.
I'm like, so true. Now I'm like contemplating getting up at like 4:35 in the morning. Like it's becoming earlier. And then I have certain family members that literally go to bed at 7:30, 8 o'clock at night, in order
Yeah.
to wake up at 4, because there's
Yep.
nothing going on, and there's
Yeah.
no chance of being disturbed to get their couple hours of just
Get
whatever
their
it is.
time.
Yeah, totally.
Dude, that was another game changer for me. Was just like owning the morning,
Hmm.
and not everybody's schedule allows that. So I guess it depends what your job is and all that. But
Right.
man, I'm such a proponent of waking up early and making your bed and just having some time. It's up to you, but having some sort of time. I see you guys laughing.
Did
Having
you see
having some
that video, "Make Your Bed"?
Admiral McCraven.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love
Oh yeah.
that.
What is
Oh,
that?
it's
What is that?
fantastic.
Awesome,
It's
dude.
fantastic.
What is
Yeah.
it?
It's like
Make
a
your bed.
commencement speech that the Admiral gave, and
Yeah,
it's called
University of
"Make Your
Texas, I
Bed."
believe. He's got a
Yeah,
book as well. I haven't read it cover to cover, but it's great. Talks about the importance of making your bed, and if you think about it, it's kind of like what we were talking about, habit building.
Yep.
So
yeah,
you make your bed, that's one task complete. Well, one completed task leads to another, leads to another, leads to another.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Another piece of that is, in SEAL training, these guys, I mean, they got to make their beds and they got to be perfect. And they're like, well, why, why? I got to make my bed. Why? Well, if you can't do the small things right, what makes you think that you can do the big things? I can't trust you with a weapon if you can't even make your bed. You know what I mean? And I think, like, and there's a couple more, but the last one he says, he's like, and if you've had a really shitty day, at least you get to go home to a made bed
that's
that was
right.
made
That
by
is
you.
English.
And I was like, yeah, that's it.
You
So
should
funny
YouTube
enough,
it. It's great.
I've told that to each one of my
That's
kids,
awesome.
and they have actually adopted that practice. 'Cause
That's great.
yeah, we make our beds.
It's so
I
silly.
even make my bed at the hotels I'm staying at, dude. I mean, I kid you
Awesome.
not. I've taken it to that next level.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Great. That's great.
That's
Well,
funny.
this has been great. Hey,
Yeah, man.
Brad, so how can people learn more about School of Grit and your book, School of Grit?
Yeah. So if you go to schoolofgrit.org, so .org, not .com, because I don't own the .com, and I'm not going to pay the money right now anyway for the .com. So go to schoolofgrit.org, O-R-G. You'll find all my contact information. You'll find what I'm up to, and then the book's available pretty much everywhere. Amazon, Barnes and Noble. I think it's even in Walmart. maybe a couple other outlets. So go check it out. Love to hear back from you. So I love hearing nothing. I mean, I get the biggest smile on my face when someone I don't know somehow gets a hold of me and they send me a picture of themselves like holding up the book, and
That's awesome.
it's awesome, man. That's
Right.
why I did it, was just to help people. I
Yeah.
figured, man, if I could just help one person, then I've done it.
Very cool.
Fantastic. Well, thanks, Brad. We loved having you on the show.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it, man. This was awesome.
Thanks, Brad. See you later.
Now go run 6 miles.
I am actually going to try that. See ya.
Bye.
10X for Gen XYZ is hosted by Zach Winter and Mark Adair Rios, co-founders of Prosperity CRE, a commercial real estate investment firm committed to providing its investors with ongoing cash flow and building long-term wealth. If you like the podcast, please give us a positive rating and subscribe to be notified about future content. Also, if you'd like to learn more about our approach to real estate investing, you can download a free copy of our real estate investment book, Investing for Cash Flow and Long-Term Wealth, by clicking the link in the show notes below. Thank you, and stay tuned for our upcoming episodes.